Thank you very much. Wow, that's an incredible gift of those powerful, kind words. I want to begin by thanking Elder Shane Point for his prayer and also recognize, thank you, Shane, recognizing the traditional territory that we're on. And I also want to thank First Call for just their unwavering belief that children and families matter, and all of the organizations that are part of First Call that are strong, they're feisty. They never hesitated to call me to account for what I was doing as representative and making sure that issues for children and families were at the forefront. And especially like to recognize the brilliant, persistent, and I hope ongoing work of First Call and its coalition to make British Columbia the last province, but the province that most needs a child poverty plan. Thank you. I want to really thank the speakers tonight, and I was really honored that Mary McNeil spoke. I kind of teased Mary when she was minister, and you can see from her values when you hear her talk how important her family is to her. And it isn't just lip service. Mary was an incredible minister for children and families. She was there for too short of a period of time, but I tease her and say the sun shone every single day for 18 months when she was the minister for children and families. And that's because Mary did some amazing things along with an incredible deputy that she had named Stephen Brown. They put the ministry back together. It was very, very broken. And Mary was a key part of that because there were some really harsh, difficult things. That ministry had failed in its mission in many, many ways, and some deeply vulnerable people were impacted. And Mary took a lot of courage to stand up, I think, in her cabinet with her colleagues and see that that began to be turned around. And she did it, I think, not because she was a technocrat or a highly partisan individual who wanted to get glory for herself. She did it because she really believed that children and families count, and that she had a value which I really respected, which was every child should be treated as well as she treats her children. And I know her children love her and her grandchildren love her. So thank you, Mary. And I would like to really recognize this incredible, incredible person, Melanie Mark. She, I can't tell you how much I love her. I just love everything about her. I'm sorry I made you cry tonight, by the way. Yeah. But when I became representative for children and youth, there was a very small staff in the Child and Youth Office, which wasn't an independent office, and the opposition fought really hard to get an independent office, and I recognize that the leader of the opposition is here tonight. John Horgan, thank you for being here. John Horgan and his colleagues, Nick Simons is here. Adrian Dix is not here, but Adrian fought, I think, a very hard-fought battle to get an independent advocate. And I was able to walk into that position and had to live up to their expectations and the expectations of all members of the Legislative Assembly. And I said to John Horgan almost every time I met him, if it was you in the same position, I'd be just as tough as I am on the government, so don't think for a minute I'm part of the opposition, because I'm not. I'll hold you to account. And he knows that, because I was not a partisan individual, but I respected people that could stand up. And the opposition plays a very important role. And I appreciate the respect of Mr. Horgan being present and also recognizing the importance of independent advocacy and oversight. And it could be after May. You might not be back next year because you may find that a little difficult, but who knows? But thank you, Mr. Horgan, for that, for your attendance and honoring us by being here tonight. But I know, Mr. Horgan, you're in good hands, because you've got this Melanie Mark. And I truly love her, and I love her in all kinds of ways, because when I met her when she was in the office of the Child and Youth Advocate, she had no problem standing up to me and saying to me, first day, I really don't even know who you are. I know what I've read about you, but what kind of person really are you? I want to get to know you, and I want to see you in action. And she was just amazing. And as I got to know her and see her, and she rose through the ranks of the representative's office as an advocate, she is an incredible advocate. And there were cases, we've had 17,000 cases in the representative's office. There were cases where Melanie would be called upon to do things that very few people would do. I'd have to say to her, we've got a child, BC Children's Hospital. It's Friday at 8 o'clock at night. You got to get over there. I know you got your own family. You got to get over there. This is someone that's going to fall through the cracks. We've got to make sure that the system serves this child well. And by the way, this is an Indigenous child as well, far away from their family. Melanie never hesitated. She'd go right there and do that work. She never gave me blowback, pushback. She never said, why are we doing this? This is too difficult. She had no hesitation to step up with the most difficult cases and to be there and form positive relationships with children and youth in the hardest circumstances. Children and youth that have blown all trust in anybody to show up and help them because they grew up in care. And there were children who were sometimes rejected in their own families or in their own communities and who needed an advocate. And so I really put my hands up to Melanie Mark because I've seen her in action. She's a feisty woman. She's a resilient woman. She's got deep values. And I just am so proud of her, and I completely support her, whatever she does in her life, and I love her children who are also beautiful, and I think we're going to be just as feisty as she is. So Melanie, thank you for that. I'd like to thank as well my dear friend Doug Kelly and the powerful First Nations leaders in British Columbia. They don't all agree with each other, and they don't expect to agree with each other. They value debate. They value principles. Doug Kelly and the Stolo Nation are incredibly strong people. Long before I came to British Columbia, they worked long and hard on child welfare issues. They have stood up for years and years and years. And we worked together on many things, many difficult things. And sometimes when some tragedies happened in their community, they even got blamed when it wasn't their fault. Sometimes even politicians blame them for things that weren't their fault. And they have worked hard to build good systems for their children without a lot of resources. And they've never lost faith as Indigenous leaders. They've never lost faith in their obligation to their children and their obligation to pass their culture and their language and their kinship. And they're reclaiming their child welfare systems, and I honor and respect that. And it takes a lot more than just talk. You have to live it. And I know the Grand Chief does do that. He loves his children and grandchildren. And it's true that we've had some feisty exchanges, but in a complete spirit of love and respect. And I just want to say a word or two about that, with that being an advocate. Sometimes being an advocate means you have to draw a line in the sand and you have to get as close to that line. You don't necessarily cross it, but you have to get there. And for children and youth in British Columbia, we have people like Joyce Preston here, who's an amazing advocate, who I look up to and respect. Thank you, Joyce. We have people who honor children like Rafi, he's an incredibly internationally famous performer and artist, put his enthusiasm and energy into honoring children and taking a child-honoring approach, which is so important, and we're lucky to have him. Salt Spring is lucky to have him. British Columbia is lucky to have you. Thank you, Rafi. But to be an advocate in this province means making change. And sometimes it means getting angry and making sure that things change. Anger is a very important thing to acknowledge, not because you hold it or you're an angry person, but because anger is what stirs change. And it stirs in you the courage to stand up and get change. And courage is really important, and persistence is important. But I think what's really important is that life is kind of enriched by difficulty. It's not the easy life that is an enriching life. It can be the difficult life that's an enriching life. And I think our love for each other is more acute when it's hard and when people make it hard. And sometimes our love for children is more difficult because they are in such a difficult situation that they're making it hard for you to even support them because they've been abused, they've been neglected, or they're just so different than every other child. Maybe they have autism, maybe they have a mental health issue, maybe they're LGBTQ. They're just totally different. And sometimes they're not accepted in their families, they're not accepted in their communities, and adults want them to be something else. But I think the amazing thing about advocacy is working with children and youth to see that their difference is an identity. And I thank Jess for her words, because children and youth in and from care have a strong and powerful identity with each other. I see Chris, I see others, or other children and youth from care here tonight. It is not a negative thing to have been from care. It is a powerful thing that has bonded people together to have a voice, and for advocates to be able to help them have a voice. And I'm really proud to be able to have some time to work with children and youth in care, to switch it from this, oh, look at these poor children that we're going to rescue, to actually saying, you know what? These are powerful individuals. They are models of resilience. They can band together and tell you what they want. They have a voice, they have rights, and they deserve to be heard. And whether it's tuition waiver, whether it's making sure that they're not sent to crappy backwater group homes like they are today, making sure that they're not living in tent cities, which is a disgrace to our province, making sure that they're well supported, listened to, and loved, I think is our biggest challenge. In British Columbia, I'm happy to advocate for 10 years, and I pass the mantle over to Bernard Richard. I'm glad he is here tonight, but there will be a lot of hard work done to finish this job, a lot of hard work done. But there are some feisty, good people that are prepared to do it, so I'm really pleased with that. And I want to just kind of end by saying that we always have a choice when you're in some position of leadership about what you do and who you stand with. And you have a choice, and you need to make that choice carefully. And I thought recently about a case that occurred since I finished being representative, but I followed. It was a case of an Aboriginal family in northern BC that had their child removed 5 times because the child has brittle bones, and 5 times. And the system didn't listen to them. You know, they removed their children 5 times. They finally got their children back. And not enough people stood with that family to say, the Ministry for Children and Families had it wrong. They shouldn't have taken that child from that family. That was the wrong thing to do. I love the ministry, I love the staff of the ministry, but sometimes they make mistakes. And it's not just a little mistake you get over, but when you have a child that's different, like that child, and you remove that child from the only natural supports that they have, that's wrong. That can't happen. I hope we'll learn from that. But the instinct is always, who do you decide to stand with? Stand with families and listen to them, and stand with their children. And when families are there really understanding that different child, stay with them. It's a very strong instinct in my history, in my experience, and I think that people are more resilient when you do recognize that and stand with them. And so I also want to thank, in terms of my own resilience as a person, the people that have really stood with me, because no person accomplishes anything with a lot of support without a lot of support. And I'm very, very honored that I've got my 2 beautiful twin daughters here with me tonight, Isabel and Portia. I'd like to actually invite them up on stage. I know they're gonna hate me for this, but this is my twins, Portia and Isabel. And no one accomplishes much without a family, and I'm very honored. Their older sister is in Montreal. She's a student at McGill. Their younger brother is in Victoria. And I really love my family, and I have a large extended family in British Columbia and in Saskatchewan, and some in Ontario as well, so I'd like to thank my family. I also want to say, I'd like to thank my community. I live in Victoria. I love Victoria. I love my community. I love my street. I love my neighbors. I love the teachers. I love the people who coach sports. I love everybody in my community. Like, I love them. I love my community. And I thank my community. But there's a group that I love to my deathbed. And that's the group of people that worked with me in the Representative for Children and Youth office. And they're incredible people, and a lot of them came tonight, not all of them, but a lot of them did. And I want them to stand up again. I thank Mel for asking them to stand up earlier. And there's one, Fred Malowski's been with me since day one. There's a whole team. I'd like you to stand up and be recognized, because I really want to thank these staff members. Stand up, Fred, and everyone. Thank you. Thank you. And there's staff members here from the Prince George office. We're the only independent office that had an office in Prince George, Burnaby and Victoria. And I personally really want to thank the people that I had a chance to work with, because I really love each and every one of them. And I'd like to say thank you. And finally, I'd just like to say back to the comments that the elder made, which is, even though sometimes you have to do a really hard job, and sometimes you're in a swamp of sadness because it's so difficult, and it's so wrong, and sometimes it's so unjust. And sometimes the best you can do is just stand with someone and say, it isn't fair. It's not good enough. I can't fix it, but it's not fair. But sometimes you can actually fix it. And that's what I like to do. So the 17,000 cases that we had together, we did a lot of good shit. Sorry, girls. And we did push the government to make improvements. They didn't make enough, but we pushed them to make some. And the true proof is whether or not this is a better society for children, youth, and families. I like to think it's a little bit better. I know there's more to go, but what the elder said about being a point of light and being a point of hope, even in the darkest days, and I think about some of the things that are occurring south of the border, some of the really negative ways that people are picking on the vulnerable, the different, and the poor, we have to work hard to be a point of hope to our children and to all children, that we can counter that. So thank you, and that's my concluding thought.